Okay, so first of all, hello everyone. Thank you everyone for joining us at the screening of the Limey. We're really happy and excited to be here. I am Michael Marisi. I'm one half of the Filmographers podcast. We're a show where we have obsessively been watching Steven Soderbergh's movies. We're studying his career one film at a time, so one episode per film. And we've been studying Soderbergh now for over 30 episodes. We're still trying to make a dent in the filmography. He is very robust. But some things that we've learned throughout the course of this season is just how versatile and fascinating and just diverse Soderbergh is. He makes movies that are small indie experimental movies like Bubble or Full Frontal, Schizopolis, and he also makes box office smashes like Aaron Brockovich or Ocean's 11, Traffic, things like that. So we've been watching one movie at a time. Like I said, we're really happy to be here. I passed off to Keir, who's going to tell us more specifically about the movie we're about to watch, The Limey.
So who here has seen The Limey before? Show of hands. Or maybe I should say show of hands for who hasn't seen The Limey. Okay, so we got a few. Okay. You're going to be scarred for life, kids. Okay, so I'm going to actually do what we do at the beginning of every episode of the podcast is we read a one-sentence summary of the film. So this will just maybe set it up for a little bit for the people who aren't familiar. A hardened British ex-con, frozen in time since the days of swinging London, comes to L.A. to learn the unpleasant truth behind his daughter's death at the hands of a sleazy music producer and teach the locals a lesson in Cockney rhyming slang. Now, it's a simple movie in some ways, but it's presented in a very complex artistic fashion. And one of the really interesting things about this is Soderbergh is coming off of, Soderbergh right now, at the time of The Limey, we're here, it's the 25th anniversary of The Limey, he's coming off Out of Sight, which is really a success in kind of every way. His early career had started obviously with Sex, Lies, and Videotape being a big, indie hit, and then kind of the next few movies went down and down and down until he really bounced back with Out of Sight. And he had thought he had figured out how to make a movie, and then he made The Limey, and the first cut was terrible, and he felt very lost. He felt defeated. He thought, "What's going on? I haven't figured this sort of thing out." And it's a film that he really found in the edit, and you'll see tonight as you watch the film that this is, it's a simple story, but it's told in with a disjointed chronology, flashbacks, some really interesting stuff. Maybe if people are interested, we can talk about it a little bit afterwards. How he takes this kind of linear story and chops it up to really amazing effect, and also to the great chagrin of his screenwriter, Lem Dobbs, who wrote a good screenplay, but a screenplay that was vastly improved by Soderbergh's edit of it. And if you enjoy this movie and you're not familiar with the Dobbs-Soderbergh battle on the commentary track, you get yourself a Blu-ray, listen to the commentary. It's one of the all-time great commentary tracks in film history. Dobbs basically goes to war with Soderbergh, taking issue with every decision he's ever made in the film. And Soderbergh is a champ, right? He
Soderbergh works with grace and poise, while Dobbs just lays into it for like 90 minutes.
But Soderbergh is correct in every respect. Had they filmed the movie Dobbs shot, it would have been about 20 minutes longer. It would have had backstory about characters that we really don't care about. What you see is really the best possible outcome. So anyway, this is, I don't want to say too much, but this is really a fascinating period in his career. This is, in some ways you could argue that this is the most productive or at least successful, commercially successful part of Soderbergh's career. Out of Sight, into The Limey, into Aaron Brockovich, Traffic, for which he won a directing Oscar, and then of course, a short time later, Ocean's 11. So not a bad run. In Out of Sight, we see the sort of foundation of Ocean's 11 and the kind of glitzy, fun, star-studded movies that Soderbergh would do from time to time. in the Limey, you're going to see the foundation of the kind of more independent, low budget, moving fast, loose and easy, imperfect but kind of perfectly imperfect movie that Soderbergh would continue to make and still continues to make. And I think I'll leave it at that. Anything to add?
One interesting tidbit that you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that from him getting hired at Artisan to make this to its release, I believe is 9 months. 9 months.
Correct. Yeah. From the pitch. That's a good point. I meant to mention that from the pitch to the actual movie release is 9 months, which is just insane. Doesn't happen. Never happens, and yet he did it. So the man is a machine.
Yeah, that's a absolute crazy pace. 9 months is like absolutely unheard of. Nobody does it except for Soderbergh, who then would follow it up with, we mentioned this run of movies. Keir mentioned of Traffic, Aaron Brockovich, Ocean's 11. Those are three movies, three big scale Hollywood movies that came out in 2 years. So it's remarkable, and we can talk volumes at the pace at which Soderbergh works. It's tremendous. It's inspiring. It's probably unhealthy, but it's fascinating nonetheless. So without further ado, I have nothing else to add, but just to say thank you to Mike Schindler, who put this whole thing together. Thank you very much. Who also has his own Soderbergh podcast, Soderbergh 28 films, 28 years. Correct, Mike? At the time, yes. He's outpacing us all. We thought this experiment. And one last Soderbergh thing, we thought this experiment of doing this podcast would be, we thought we had it contained, but he has a new movie come out in January, then he has another new movie coming out in March. Not sure when this will end, but we're having fun, and thank you to everybody at Classic Cinema for allowing us to do this, our families who have the immense patience. My two sons, either you guys are thinking I'm the best dad or worst dad right now. We'll see. But thank you for everybody for being patient. And yeah, let's just enjoy this great 4K presentation. Mike tells me it is fantastic and pristine. And always thank you to Kevin Lau. I don't know where Kevin went, but oh, hey, Kevin. Yes, thank you, Kevin. You're the best. So anyway, on with the show. And if you're watching and have any questions, keep them in mind. We have very thoroughly studied both this movie and Soderbergh, so I feel confident that we can answer whatever may pop up. So we'll do a little Q&A after, so keep those questions in mind, and we'll be ready to answer. Keir, anything else?
If we can't answer it, we'll make up a convincing answer.
There you go. All right, well, thank you, everyone, and we'll talk to you in about 90 minutes. So, okay, the Limey. That was the first time that I've actually seen it on the big screen. And Mike, you're right. The 4K, absolutely pristine. That great balance of being, grainy and cleaned up just enough, which is really nice, which I always appreciate, because sometimes these 4K restorations they start to look weird. Especially we've seen, I think, with the James Cameron stuff on those discs, that things sometimes get a little bit off. But first time I've seen it, so like I said, we like to do some, Q&A. I actually have a question for you. I want to know two questions. One just dawned on me while I was watching the movie. Two, the second one, most prominently, I want to know if this is your first time seeing it and your experience of theatrically seeing the Limey. And two, I can't believe I've never noticed this. How are Nicky Katt and his partner not in jail? They get arrested for attempted murder, ostensibly, and they're out within 12 hours. I was watching it, and I was like, how are these guys not in prison?
My best take on that is that since the DEA has decided to do this in an extrajudicial way, that to actually put these guys in jail, they're going to have to create this record. But instead, what they're doing is they're turning Wilson loose on the man they really want to get, because he has that little speech about how, we don't have time for the niceties of the law. So I think that basically if they arrest them, it creates a record. But yeah, you could look at that as being a little bit implausible, perhaps. This is... Thank you. This second time I've seen it on the big screen, but the first time was so long ago, it feels like the first time, really. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to do a little dance here. One of the things that is so striking, so I don't know how much some of you know about this film, but the scenes where Terrence Stamp is the guy who plays Wilson is. Oh, great. I think Mike went to go fix it. Okay, so thank you. Is it back on? Okay, thank you for fixing that. Okay, so Terrence Stamp's character. You'll notice throughout the film there's some footage of him as a young man, and that is actually taken from Ken Loach's first film. It's a 1967 film called Poor Cow, and he's actually a young man in that film, so you get a little bit of the effect of like Linklater's Boyhood or something, where you actually get, there's no CGI, there's no makeup or anything. It is him as a younger man, and of course it's thematically appropriate because it's a 60s film about a thief and a guy who gets sent up. And when Soderbergh discovered this footage, he asked Loach for permission to use it. He used it, I think, to really great effect. It's a movie about memory and a movie about regret. And obviously, with the new stuff that Soderbergh filmed, there's a lot of, time shifts and stuff. But I think it just adds this really delicious element to actually shift all the way back to actual footage from the 60s. And I don't know, as far as just the experience of watching it again on the big screen, obviously most movies are better on the big screen. I just absolutely loved seeing the, all the kind of camera effects and stuff that Soderbergh is doing with that weird lens flare kind of thing. I don't really know what that is, if it's a filter or a film treatment or something like that, but the light, like the headlights are actually just like shooting straight up to the top of the frame. That stuff just looks fantastic on the big screen.
I agree. It's such a tragic Mobius strip of a movie that's meant to be more evocative than it is practical. And I read this study once that about like how seeing a film on a big screen actually does affect your brain. You experience it chemically, biologically different than watching on a smaller screen. Right? Watching stuff on your phone is no good for many reasons, but like seeing it, it chemically affects your senses and your experience of a film. So a movie that's meant to be, and we talk about this bit, like less practical scenes overlap. It's not so, I guess quote unquote realistic, but it's meant to be, an experience, a sensory experience at some time. So getting that bigger experience is pretty perfect, I would say. So we open up for some questions. Before I do the housekeeping thing that we do, we are available, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Pocket Casts, ones I surely have never even heard of. YouTube. We're on YouTube. And really quickly, the preview, the trailer we saw before the movie, the first one, Holiday Hold Up, Mike, thank you for throwing that in there. I love it. That's actually a movie that I co-directed / wrote, and it's playing here on December 17th, so come back for that, please. And there's going to be, if you don't like me, there's going to be cast and crew here, so you can see them. So anyway, does anybody have any questions about Soderbergh, about the Limey, about anything at all in that arena?
The cinematic references that Soderbergh was really drawing on when he made this, or Point Blank, the Lee Marvin film directed by John Borman, which is a relentless revenge thriller from, what year was that? 60? That was 67 also, like Poor Cow, actually. Which, and a very stylized, also has this kind of time-shifting aspect to it. And then also Get Carter, which is a 1971 film starring Michael Caine. I think those were really the two reference points that he was drawing from, more than The Terminator. But, it's interesting. We were talking, when we recorded our episode about this, we were talking about revenge films, and we were both kind of saying, yeah, I don't really like revenge films. And then we were like, maybe I do like revenge films, because the touch points we were talking about, we agreed were really great. It's a genre that maybe if it's, a Liam Neeson revenge film, I'm less into it. But there's something kind of great about the simplicity of his quest, Wilson's quest, that I think allows him to get all artsy with it and play with the visuals and play with the edit. And there's a sequence, I don't know how many people noticed this, but there's a really famous sequence in this film where he's telling the story to his daughter's drama teacher, and they're cutting between 3 different locations, but it's kind of narratively consistent. And that's a really obviously intentional choice to, make it seem, much more like the kind of vagaries of memory. And, I think that's his real, that's his mission in this movie is to kind of dramatize memory and regret and all that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I can't add more. I guess it does differentiate though. Like you're right, because like there is more. I guess it is very emotional and it's very evocative, but like there is that Terminator aspect of just. And I watched Terminator 1 and 2 this week. And what's that? Yes, absolutely. They've asked. They're like, do we watch the rest? I'm like, nope. There's only the 2. No, they. It all ended 1992. It was done. But yes, no, there is that sort of like cold relentlessness that's just never going to stop, always keep coming. That Terrence Stamp does really well, very Terminator-esque. That's pretty awesome. I love that.
But he shows more regret than the Terminator.
I don't know, that thumbs up if you like the. There's more emotion there. Yeah, no. And that's, oh boy. Yeah. And that's a great point though, because like, the movie's a lean 90 minutes. This is a pretty tight movie. And like, I wonder, I don't know if you came across this. This makes me curious because he found this movie in the edit, like Keir said at the intro. He found it in the edit. So I guess I'm curious, like how that was written. Like, did they film that specifically? Did he know that he was going to edit it in that way and all the, like James pointed out, like all these different locations and then splice it together, or how? I wonder how that was written and then how it was ultimately edited.
Yeah, so I think that's left up for our interpretation, and my interpretation of it is that he doesn't kill him because in that moment he kind of recognizes his own culpability in his, this thing that had started as a game with his daughter, where she would pretend she was going to shop him to Old Bill. She was going to call the cops, and he was never really worried about it. And then he realizes that this kind of, this dance he had with his daughter throughout her upbringing, and that he had never taken seriously. Of course, somebody else wouldn't know that it was an empty threat. And I think that he's overcome with regret in that moment. And despite having killed all these other people, I think he walks away. But that's just my interpretation. Because we do see him killing other people, or at least even off screen, we know he's killed other people. So, I guess if Soderbergh wanted to make that explicit, maybe he would have shown it. But I also think too that he's leaving Valentine, obviously physically very injured, nice compound fracture, but also he's now going to have to live with the knowledge and his regret that I think maybe finally got through to Valentine, as shallow as he is. I don't know.
That's funny. I think I imagine, and if you were the Terminator, this is a line that we were laughing about early, actually just yesterday, where I think it was Edward Furlong in Terminator 2 asked, like, "Are you going to kill him?" He says, "Of course, I'm a Terminator." So in my mind, I think he was just Terminator. Yeah. I didn't know we were going to talk about the Terminator this much. I'm so glad that I watched both movies actually this week. But my interpretation, I don't know how you felt. I thought he was just leaving him for the tide, is what I assumed. I think you're right. Like he had this kind of realization of the Mobius strip that Jenny and him were on. I just assumed that he left Valentine. His ankle's broken. He left him for the tide. But I don't know if that's really possible. He could have crawled out, I assume.
He seems pretty weak, but yeah,
Maybe.
It's interesting because watching this, I was just realizing that at the end of Haywire, a later Soderbergh movie, where Gina Carano has a fight with Ewan McGregor on a beach. There's also another broken ankle and somebody else being left for the tide. So it is a bit of a recurring motif with Soderbergh, shockingly, because he doesn't really usually go in for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, wow, I never thought about that. Great.
And also alert observers will notice that Luis Guzman was wearing a Che shirt, foreshadowing Soderbergh's eventual filming of the movie Che. Any other questions, comments, reactions?
like we said, the commentary, which I think you might actually just be able to get on YouTube and then just watch it along with the film. So the commentary, Lem Dobbs, and Soderbergh go at it, and Lem Dobbs has a list of grievances. One of which being the Cockney slang and rhyming. Like, he hated that. He's like, you only do it once. Don't do it any more than once. And obviously, it's like 4 or 5 times that Terrence Stamp does it. So Soderbergh was so. This is kind of I feel like, and we've talked about it, like a kind of an FU to Lem Dobbs, because 2 movies later he puts in Don Cheadle doing this Cockney slang, and he does it all the time in Ocean's 11. Badly, yeah. So there is this idea, and I think we may have read it or seen it somewhere, that like that was very much intentional on Soderbergh's part, because like if you don't like Cockney slang rhyming now, just wait till you watch Ocean's 11. Yeah, so I think that was definitely him being like, I'm gonna get all the Cockney slang in, and Lem Dobbs can't complain about it because it's not his movie. So I think you're right on the money that there is definitely something there, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I watched this movie when we did the show a number of times, and I'd seen it a number of times before, and this is the first time I was really aware of that and noticing that. The only thing that I can chalk it up to potentially is that it was so hastily edited. Like, he was really, it's Marianne Bernard is credited as the editor. Sarah Black. Marianne Bernard's is his name eventually when he starts editing his own movies, and this is one of the last movies that he doesn't edit. There's a few more. I forget exactly when he starts, but they work together. He's very, very, as Soderbergh is, very, very kind and respectful, and he's very conscientious of crediting her as working. They collaborate on the edit, but it is a sense that Soderbergh did most of it to really fulfill his vision, but nonetheless, they were very, very much under the gun. Like I said, this movie was, inception to completion 9 months, and then they cut a movie that Soderbergh wasn't happy with, people were confused by, so they had to go cut it basically again. And once you start a movie from scratch again, you're resetting the timestamps, you're resetting all the music, everything's got to be basically reapplied, and it's very, very time consuming. The only idea that I can have for that black, and because there are those moments, like I said, I never noticed that before until seeing on the big screen, is that it's possibly a potential of how fast they had to work. I don't know, any.
Yeah, I noticed them more this viewing as well. They seemed a little more jarring and a little unnecessary. However, I think whatever reason is behind it, it can't be Soderbergh's laziness. I mean, the guy was working 16 hours. No, but yeah, good catch. The story as story needs something. I find the performances fascinating. I find the just actual the camera work, but more than that, just the direction and the complete vision of filmmaking to make it so interesting. And I also think there's so much sly humor in it. I mean, I find it very, very funny. Not laugh a minute, but there are some really choice humorous moments in this that I don't know, I absolutely adore. But you're right. It's I don't know. I think it's a great demonstration of what filmmaking craft can do. It's not a play that would stand on its own 2 feet. Thank you all so much for coming out and watching a movie with us. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much to the Classic Cinemas for hosting us and letting us watch it on the big screen. This was a totally awesome experience.
Yes, absolutely, everybody. Thank you. And, the whole library, every Soderbergh movie, we just released the episode on Unsane today, his first movie made on an iPhone, first of many, and that just came out today. So, check all those out. Come back to Classic Cinemas. This is my neighborhood cinema. I love it here. So please always return, support your local movie theater. And, thanks for coming. This was a blast.
Yeah, and if you check our episode on the Limey out, please leave a comment, leave a thought, leave a star, leave a rating. We'd definitely appreciate it. Thanks so much.